we got her.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. What a mating dance. That's all I can say. But we did it.
We did it. Welcome, Martha. Welcome. Hi, Ellen. Thank you. We were able. Okay, it took us 25 minutes with
Well, we've
technology.
quite a
Here we
bit more
are.
than that because you and I were there at about 6:45. So
Yes.
it's very interesting. This is a little microcosm of how much our lives really are affected by this. And watching you, Carla, for the last however long, 45 minutes, seeing good morning, everyone. It adds a lot of convenience to our life, but it can also bring in a fair amount of stress, can't it? That's good.
Yeah. You have some certain expectations and this illusion of perfection that how these sort of events are done effortlessly by others. And it's not just live events, it's just how people gauge their lives against others on
Well,
social media.
what I also want to say is that someone in an office somewhere has an agenda for what they want to build their business around, and it involves us adapting or adopting, our behavior to fit their needs and expectations in the products they've designed. And I don't mean to say that in some way where it's some nefarious scheme or something like that, but often it actually is. There's an organization out here in Silicon Valley that has titled themselves Dopamine Labs. And we're going to talk about dopamine in a moment. But their motto, every company has a motto, or many companies, Nike says, just do it, but their motto is brace yourself out there. We design minds. We design
Ooh.
minds. And here's a fact, and it's why this book is called The Happiness Hack. The products, it's more than the products. This isn't something that technology started. Uh, Advertisers and hucksters and a whole legacy of people for generations before that have known that if we give people enough to leave them wanting more, we can manipulate and control their behavior. That is part of the loop or the hook of the dopamine cycle. Dopamine is one of the neuromodulators, one of the brain chemicals that is involved in creating feelings of happiness and satisfaction. And people can entice us on to their dopamine roller coaster, can keep us getting back in line and wanting to get back on again. And look no further than the time we've spent on Instagram. Who has a story? Okay, one more swipe, one more click, scroll down, one more picture, or even this sense of FOMO, fear of missing out, that we feel when we're not on our tech. All of this is showing how addictive these dopamine cycles are. And it's very, very important to know this didn't happen. People are designing these cycles literally to lure us into the products and experiences that serve their business models, not our life model. That's
So,
largely, oh, go ahead, please, Carla.
so when you talk about these dopamine hooks, can we compare them to other, probably more understandable dopamine hooks? Is it comparable to maybe like chocolate or alcohol or any sort of other drugs or gambling or something else that keeps luring us back unconsciously?
Well, let's put chocolate into a whole different category because it has its own unique sense of reactions in the brain that create feelings of happiness. It has an amazing chemical reaction on the brain. By the way, something else does, sort of a different thing, but I'll mention it. So does soil, as in garden soil. Garden soil, if you're out there gardening, there are enzymes in the soil, or bacteria, excuse me, that activate chemical processes that increase serotonin levels in the brain. So go out there and garden, but that's a different story. Carla, yes, I mean, anything, let's go all the way back to the paleo days, the very, very early days of human evolution. We could even go back farther, but dopamine is the neuromodulator associated with motivation and reward. It's the brain chemical that makes you want to do things to get a feeling of reward at the other side. So in a very in an evolutionary sense, you can imagine that dopamine would get you maybe to when you're walking along on a path, maybe gathering or hunting, and you see that there's a tasty little grub on a branch, but you have to reach for it and grab it really quickly. Dopamine would be the chemical that would motivate you to grab it And then it would also be the one that could help give you that feeling of satisfaction. Of course, you get other forms of satisfaction too when you popped it in your mouth and knew that you had been agile and attentive enough to see that little reward out there. So motivation and reward is a huge part of the human experience. But when people understand the chemical cycles associated with motivation and reward, and even when they understand, even before that, understand the psychology and the behavior tendencies associated with motivation and reward, they can design experiences that exploit them, or that, if you will, ride that roller coaster, taking advantage of your brain chemistry and the rewards that the dopamine gives you to get you to do what they want. Dopamine's not a bad thing. In the human experience, we need dopamine on so many levels. It's what motivates us to, wash the dishes at night so we have a clean kitchen, and the satisfaction of that at the end. We couldn't make it as humans without dopamine. It's what, if we're let's say we were back in the cave bar tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years ago, and we saw an attractive cave person standing next to us, but we felt a little bit shy. Dopamine would get us to reward them, to approach them and say, hey, nice animal skin, right? So this is part of our evolutionary biology. But when the point to which we understand it now, both psychologically and on a chemical level, allows people to go, aha, I know how to go in and game this. And it's really hacking our code in a sense. And so this is why I work and write on themes that are related to hacking back.
So how is it, because in your book, all right, I'm going to go and look at it right now.
And by the way, I see some names here of people signing in from Alaska, from all over places. So I want to quickly say, and I see my cousin in from Ohio. So thank you, Carla, for bringing this together. Hi, Charlie. Hi, Jamie. Hi, Kathy. And hi, Christina. It's nice to see you all. And all of the other names that are scrolling by. I really appreciate you all being here to listen to a really important conversation.
So when in your book, you said highly addictive internet users are 2.5 times more likely to report depression than the average users.
Yes.
Okay. So how does that work in our brains? Dopamine is supposed to be good for our brains. Why is it causing us to be depressed?
Well, it's this, first of all, I want to disclose I'm neither a psychiatrist nor a psychologist. I am applying disciplines from psychology, neuroscience, and other scientific practices, as well as some ancient wisdom and so forth, to what I'm about to say. So if any neuroscientists are in the house, I fully invite your comment. But the first thing I want to say is every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Dopamine, like any chemical, breaks down into other chemicals. And one of the chemicals associated with the dopamine breakdown is cortisol, which is associated with stress. So if we can extrapolate from that if we are moving through a high number of dopamine cycles throughout the day, that the brain probably has sort of an ambient level of, sort of a cortisol that is the coefficient, I think I'm using that word correctly, of this dopamine process. So that's important to remember. But I feel there's something more, and it's not something that it's not as scientific as a dopamine chemical reaction. When we look at distraction and distractions plays, hi Rohan, all the way from Bangalore, wow. And a former high school student, classmate, hi Teresa. Okay, I'll stop. Everyone, I love you all and thank you for being here, and I'll stop calling out names because I could do it the whole talk. But let's go back to human purpose and what human life is all about. We evolved at a time where connecting in very small and close clans with frequent interaction with close people was part of our survival. If we look at the amount of the brain that's dedicated to social interaction and associations with positive experiences with other people and memories and emotions associated with people in our close circle, a huge part of our brain's functionality is based on social connection, number one. Number two, there is a mode in the brain that's called the default network. Some people call it the default mode network. It's the genius mode of the brain. It is when that busy little executive mode of the brain gets occupied enough with another task that this other, I kind of see it as this really crafty little mode sort of kicks in, but it's a mode that integrates many different types of thought processes and many different areas of the brain to create new and previously unconnected associations between thoughts. And many people talk about this as the aha lounge or the genius lounge of the brain. The default mode is very often where we get our, oh my gosh, like I never thought of that before ideas. Or if it also happens when we're spacing out or daydreaming. And I love the concept of directed daydreaming, where you make time to daydream, to deliberately think about, how am I going to plan something that you're working on, and you make time to space out for it. You're inviting that default mode in. Another pro tip for this, and it's my favorite, and that's routine tasks, things such as carefully chopping vegetables, if you're mindfully chopping vegetables, or mindfully cleaning your house. And in fact, I think it was on Noah Rashida's site, Secular Buddhism, there was a quote shared yesterday that said that if you're mopping the floor or washing your dishes mindfully, it is every bit as important and effective as meditating. And actually, the science would say it's a little bit different neuroscientifically than meditating, but the benefits are very closely associated. But anyway, back to that daydreaming. We say in our society, oh my gosh, I'm so distracted, because we're distracted on the phone all the time. And so as a result of that, we feel, and on TV, binge watching, so forth. As a result of that, we don't make time for the type of daydreaming, distraction, and spacing out that activates the highest, like some of the best parts of our brain. So we are starving for that creative human reintegration that the brain does naturally, because we feel so shameful about the amount of time we're spending online. Also, we're disconnected from people in a real human sense, because we're liking, loving, sharing, sending, but not really checking in to say, Carla, how are you?
Yeah, right.
Right? And so, and then that combined with, I think, the chemical breakdown that dopamine, the chemical breakdown of dopamine, where it goes into the more cortisol related chemicals. I don't know, maybe we have some information here. I also think the ambient stress of our society, which is sort of, in a very Buddhist sense, the sum total of all causes and conditions that have brought us here, yes, we live with a lot of stress. And the stress does change our brain chemistry. I don't know. When I look at all of the people who are depressed, and I map it against the high percentages, and I map it against what it takes for humans to survive and the tendencies that have kept us going over the years, I find it both confusing and frustrating that society finds it so convenient to say you and you and you and you. There's something wrong with you. You're all depressed, without looking at itself and saying, what are we doing?
Yes. Yes. So you mentioned in your book how our brains are not, they never had anything in history to prepare us for this sort of information and dopamine fixes and interactions with mobile devices. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yes, and I think that that has been true before, and certainly it will be true again. The thing is that if we look at the evolutionary biology of the brain, it didn't anticipate this, or really, any radically different future moment in time. The tendencies of the brain are to solve problems in a certain way that, if we look in the aggregate over human history, certainly pointed to or led to this moment in time. But the brain is really, this bombardment that we have is so much more stimulation than the brain evolved for. Let's go back to that cave. It's a fun exercise. I love thinking of the paleo brain, because paleo diet is so popular. Why not borrow from it and do paleo brain? So in the paleo brain, let's think, what would have distracted us in the day? We might have been walking along a path and our eye caught a little shiny rock, maybe on the side, and suddenly we had a new rock to come home to either have for a ritual or to make an arrowhead out of, or something like that. Or we saw that grub on the tree, or we saw a rustle in the grass. Distraction favored us to survive, certainly, by giving us interruptions to our attention that would allow us to move into behaviors that favored our survival, either by avoiding emergencies or by bringing something in that favored, that was beneficial for us. But if you think of or might get distracted for the pleasure of it. We'd see a child, playing a little game or chasing a butterfly or something, and we'd have a good laugh. It would bring us pleasure. We'd probably be distracted, I would say, by something happening around us. I don't know, no way to really estimate, but a few times a day, maybe once or twice an hour. Right? And I'm sure now you see where I'm going. So most people report, the science reports, that right now we either have an impulse, an endogenous impulse to seek a distraction, or reach a frustration level with what we're doing, where we have such an easy out that we don't power through, that we distract ourselves or allow ourselves to be distracted approximately every 11 waking minutes. So that's a little bit less than 6 times an hour. The research on this is inconclusive, but a few years ago, about 5 years ago, the research on it said every 18 minutes, and it talked about it as a drop, and it was, at the time, that drop was very skewed to younger ages, and it was correlated with media, the reliance on media. But the drop was low, the attention spans were lower in younger ages, sort of, I think, late adolescents to late teens had a lower attention span, and other people had a longer one, maybe I recall 23 minutes or 22 minutes, something like that. Now across all of these age sectors, it's much closer, and it's come down to approximately 11 minutes. I don't know that doesn't sound good to me.
And no, and I don't think it's getting in the other direction either. I think it's getting less and less. Would you agree?
Well, I can't agree scientifically. And I would say if we look at the rise and the increase in the sensory bombardment from media and technology, here's an important phrase to remember. Your brain will do more of whatever it's doing right now. So, and by the way, let's remember something really important. We think the brain is here to think. Well, yeah, it thinks, but it thinks in service of keeping us safe and alive, both short-term and long-term. It's keeping us safe and alive. So your brain is constantly watching your actions and pattern recognizing from what you're doing and updating its hypothesis of what it takes to keep you safe and alive. So if you're on the phone all day, the brain is going to think this is what she does to survive. And by the way, your brain's hypothesis is always, I am doing a perfect job because she's here. She's alive. I did it. Yay, go me. Right? And so even if these things aren't making us happy, the brain doesn't necessarily say, time for you to make a change, girl.
Right.
Because you're here.
Just an automatic drive, overdrive.
Right. So this is, and by the way, here, all scientists in the crowd, we don't know that there's something else other than the brain at play here. We might think that, we might believe that, we don't know it. There are people who are trying to find where the neural correlates in the brain are that would say, let's do a reset and have an intention. And if they're there, they're certainly in the prefrontal cortex, because that is the home of highest human cognition. It's where we believe we find the evidence of the brain's role in meta thinking, which is thinking about thinking. It's where self-awareness is. And interestingly, it is absolutely the part of the brain that we train, develop, and synaptically enrich through gratitude and meditation practices. So gratitude and meditation practices, if you're doing them, go you, because the brain loves them, and they're really addressing the parts of the brain that help you override a lot of the bombardment that I'm speaking about. So yes, yes, yes on gratitude and meditation, or any sort of reflective practice. But real quickly, I'll wrap it up really quickly. That the question was, is there more of it coming? Likely so, because everyone out there who's designing these and who's using these, their brains are doing more of exactly what their brains will do more of what they're doing right now. If you want to resist it, make time, build time, and prioritize around alternate practices. And believe me, your brain will respond accordingly.
So my biggest thing is the first hour in the morning and the last hour at night.
Yes.
No phone, no devices, no screens. And that time is to reclaim your mind.
Beautiful.
Before you sleep and right when you wake up. And highly recommend that to everybody. I want to read a sentence out of your book that I have highlighted and circled. It says, it's in a section called Reclaim the Upper Hand. And it says, the things that distract us are often designed to distract us, apps, casinos, video games, political campaigns, TV serials. The people who created them are experts in using hooks to activate dopamine-fueled cravings in your brain. They know how to keep us hanging, to get us to click just one more time. So there's a science behind luring us in. Now, seeing yourself as a victim won't help you kick the habit. So tell us, Ellen, what helps us kick the habit then?
Good. Well, the first thing I want to say is, Carla, you are way ahead of me because I don't, boy, first hour of the morning, first and last hour of night, I salute you because that is great. I do at least 30 minutes. It's usually not too much more than that, the nature of my work, but I know you work in this area too, so hats off to you. At night, I actually tend to, I do 30 minutes at night, and I have a very specific nighttime practice, which will help answer your question right in a minute. But I tell people, if you can't do 30 minutes, you can't do 20 minutes, you can't do 12 minutes, and you can't do an hour, this is so important. Even do the first thing you do in your day, whatever it is, even for 1 minute, make it something other than tech, anything other than tech. Stretch, pet your puppy, go make eye contact with someone you live with or love. Make yourself tea, brush your teeth mindfully, anything, and then tell your brain, today is about what I want, not about what tech wants. And really say that to your brain. When we turn to our tech first thing in the morning, we are giving our brains a powerful message that says, this is what your day is going to be about. And your brain is like a good, obedient puppy at that point. It will comply. So really great that you do that, but out there in the audience, if doing that for an hour seems out of reach, start with 1 minute. But tell your brain, double down and tell your brain why you're doing it, and it will with time make a difference. Okay, coming back to being something other than a victim. Carla, did you want to say something first?
Go for it. Go for it.
Other than a victim. Again, tell your brain, I get it now. I see what is happening and I want to change it. So 2 weeks ago, there was a there was a small conference at a university in Palo Alto of a very elite group of neuroscientists focused on a big topic, and this is the power of mind. And this was a group of neuroscientists exploring the concept of intention and going, there seems to be something about when we direct our brain toward something we want, a behavior change or a goal, that the brain tends to respond in ways beyond what we currently understand. So they were bringing these neuroscientists together to increase focus on really trying to understand what the power of intention is on a neuroscientific level. So we can wait for them to do their research, but I know from all kinds of experiences over the millennia that there is a power of mind that we can harness. And that is when we direct and train our brains to think and act in certain ways, they become really good little puppies, and they learn to obey. So the first thing, if you feel like a victim of tech, and I'm like, and who hasn't? I mean, I have a story where once, and thank goodness only once, I could not believe my eyes when I saw Angry Birds the first time. And I played Angry Birds until 2 a.m. And at the end of that, I said, what has happened to me here? I've been saying, one more try for 3 hours. And I thought, never again. And that really did increase my awareness of what was happening on a hook level. So I would say the first step is awareness, become aware, and tell yourself things like, ask yourself, does this matter to me right now? If I feel myself getting hooked in to Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, any of these things, I will tell myself, how is this distracting me this is distracting you from the important right now. It's not a distraction you need. How is this helping you do what matters? Or how is this helping you align with your purpose? And it becomes easy with me, and it probably took some practice, but it becomes easy for me to say, no, there's actually something more important to me, and very quickly click away. So awareness and intention are superpowers in the brain, and any of us can use them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and shutting off your notifications on all your apps.
Honey,
Huge.
I don't even have notifications. I don't even have the apps. So,
app.
and by the way,
Download
one
the
day I
app.
will write, I had a message in Messenger on Facebook that I had to read, and I was only with my mobile device. And so I was like, "Arr," and I went and downloaded the app so I could get this critical message. And there were, I think, 7 asks on the onboarding process to ask for Facebook asking me to interrupt me with a notification in one of 2 or 3 different ways. Facebook wants to send you blank notifications. Facebook wants to send an audible sound. And of course I said, no, 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 no. I got my message. It was important and I acted on it. And then I immediately deleted the Messenger app because it is a distraction optimization engine designed to hijack your time and bring you into a state that serves its agenda, not your agenda.
Yes. So let's talk about that. Our agenda and the power of the mind. You wrote about a gentleman in your book who hiked up Everest in his shorts.
He didn't summit, but he got 2/3 of the way up. Yes.
Right. In his shorts and a t-shirt.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Of the mind.
The power of mind. He hacks his autonomous nervous system. He even can play with his immune system, which is amazing. His name is Wim Hof. He's known as the Iceman. And he's a guy in his late 50s, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's actually, I think he's a year younger than I am. I'm going to tell you something really interesting he does. He uses breath and mind control to do all kinds of amazing things that we assume are part of our autonomous nervous system. And by the way, there are monks, Tibetan monks, who have very similar practices through breathing techniques and through meditation techniques, and they can raise the temperature of their fingertips. I think I've heard up to 12 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot. Like, that's mind control. Well, and let's be really clear, it's not mind control, it's mind control. It's autonomous. So it's the earliest part of our brain, the parts of our brain that are associated with body with everything happening in our body. Autonomous means completely automatic and invisible. We don't have anything to do with them. He has shown that mind can do this. And in fact, you could dunk this man into a big tub of ice water, a vat of ice water, and he could sit calmly in that ice water for about, I think he's up to 1 hour and 57 minutes without, get this, not only can he do it, but his core body temperature does not decrease.
Wow.
It's crazy. Now, but wait, there's more. That was a dopamine hook. But wait, there's more. That was the joke. I have to work on my humor, Carla. It's clearly not that good.
I want to know what's more.
Yes, you're dopamine hooked. You're about to get a big reward. You can go and stay with him for 4 days, and he will teach you the technique. And he will dunk you into the cold water outside his houseboat, I think, in the Netherlands. And by the end of the day, through the breathing technique, you'll be able to stay in this ice cold water going, it's fine, I feel fine, I'm comfortable, through his breathing technique. And then on the 4th day, somehow you all go to Czechoslovakia and you trek up to the top of a mountain there where the rangers wear like ninja attire because they're completely wrapped in warm, things to keep them warm in this sub-zero temperature. And he will hike you up singing and dancing to the top of the mountain, where he will maybe take a movie of you all doing, say, the Harlem Shuffle or some sort of other line dance. And you're all in, if I recall correctly, your bathing suits. And I think some of them are barefoot. And they walk up there and they're fine. In 4 days. Yeah. So our minds, there's so much more power than we know.
Right. So it's not just this individual, this one superhero individual.
No,
it's capable. It's the capacity of everybody.
Apparently, there's some really charming movies about it online. And in fact, I will post to the stream here a link so people can watch it, along with a link to my book if anyone wants to order it, because it covers a lot of topics like this. And by the way, It is,
Yep.
I've been hearing some really nice feedback that say it is truly the gift of happiness. People who are
It,
reading it, even someone who received it as a gift and said, I was very skeptical. I thought it was going to be another book like this. And he wrote
oh,
literally a giddy message about how much he learned from it. So my hope is that everybody learns at least one thing from the book that will change their mindset enough that they come back into more control of their happiness.
yes, yes. And the biggest takeaway I got was to look people in the eye
Mm,
and acknowledge them, and how that gives us a dopamine rush as well.
mhm.
That human to human interaction. And if that person doesn't receive it, be aware that they have the same anxieties, tech-ridden anxieties that we might be facing.
Well,
So,
they may. Again, one of the things I learned in this book is a lot of scientific rigor. I worked with a brilliant neuroscientist at Stanford named Sarah Eagleman, who was the absolute queen of knuckle raps when I said anything that couldn't be scientifically proven. So we don't know that they have the same tech anxiety, but
right,
we
right.
we have to understand that our human condition is challenging right now. If we even look at the numbers, many people report in our society low levels of happiness, and people feel a certain sense of threat. And when we are in any sort of threat, there are cognitive capacities that are compromised, and we have to have tremendous empathy for that. So if the person
Right.
doesn't respond, here are two things to help you feel good. First, you can have empathy for them. And the great news is empathy also, the practice of empathy strengthens parts of the prefrontal cortex that are very powerful and very healthy in all of the ways that our brains function. But also, even without us getting an acknowledgement from them, we have probably done some mirror neuroning with them, which is something that I don't
Oh,
have time to go into it, but we are activating neuronal responses in them, even on a subconscious level, simply through kindness and connection and things like eye contact. And the research on this is really fascinating. They did studies of people who would walk through parks and make random eye contact with people they didn't know, strangers in the parks. And on the other side, they would interview the people and ask them how they liked their walk through the park. And those who had had eye contact, even if they weren't consciously aware of it, enjoyed their walk through the park more.
ah,
I want to call out, I have a friend who has signed in from India. Peter, thank you so much for signing in. I'm really honored and nice to have
yeah.
you here. Really great. It's really wonderful how people from all over the world are signing in. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Well, I think your book is coming out at a very timely manner, especially with the holidays. We have an
Yeah.
opportunity to interact face to face with people. And I think the biggest gift you can give each other is to put your devices away and look each
Yes.
other in the eye. Have
And
a
and yet here
conversation.
we all are, right? And you and I are
Yeah.
looking each other in the eye. And this is the thing, there are some things, I've worked in technology my whole career. There are some things that has done that my life, there are things I can't imagine having been able to do in my life without technology. Writing this book, for example, imagine how different to write this on a typewriter. Look at the illustrations. They were done with technology. So I'm not here to say don't use technology. My message is simple. Use the power of your mind, your greatest gift. Use the power of your mind to get in charge of tech rather than to have tech in charge of you. And this book breaks down the power of your mind so you know what is happening to you so you can make decisions that serve you about how, where, why, and with whom you use tech.
Yes.
Back in charge. That is the mission. That is the mission.
I love it, Ellen. And I love you. Let's give Ellen a bunch of hearts because she's so
Oh,
marvelous. I
I'll
absolutely love
heart you
it.
back. I'm hearting you all back. It's so great. Yeah. This, look at, here's the thing. We are human. Lucky, lucky us. We don't know why we're here, but we're here to do something that matters to us, not to businesses and organizations that have an agenda that serves their mission but may not serve ours. So let's get back in charge and use use what gifts we have through human innovation, through the great thing that brilliant people, maybe even and some brilliant people watching out there have created. And let's use them for our highest human intention and not simply to get pulled into the routine and obvious and potentially unrewarding tendencies of our evolutionary biology.
Yes. Thank you, Ellen. And again, her book is The Happiness Hack. Treat yourself. It is so good. So thank you so much, Ellen. I
Thank
really
you all
appreciate
so much. It was a pleasure, Carla. And congratulations on prevailing with the tech. And I'm now going to go and delete my Facebook app. Great.
Well, thank you everybody who joined. I really appreciate it. And let's go on and have a good day.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone. Thank you.
Ellen.